Okay.
Does this still count as a good deed, though?
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
Let me notch that over here on my list. Good deed. Good evening. Welcome to the July 8th meeting of the New Market Conservation Commission. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Sue, would you do the roll call, please? Present.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go right into our guest speaker. Kylie Briggs is with the Orion Society, and he works with New Hampshire Fish and Game as a contracted wildlife biologist. That's correct, Kylie, right?
I'll fix it.
Okay. And he's here tonight to talk with us about some of the non-game wildlife here in Newmarket. So,
All right, yeah. I'll just stand, I guess. So, first, thank you for having me.
How do
know
I
that
sit
we
so
were
you can
probably
see?
all expecting Josh Megacy from New Hampshire Fish and Game tonight, and he wasn't able to make it for one reason or another. So you have me instead. I've been working with New Hampshire Fish and Game, as well as state departments in 4 other states in the Northeast, on a regional project to advance Blanding's turtle conservation efforts throughout the entire eastern portion of their range. And where we're standing today here in Newmarket, we just happen to be very close to some critical habitat for this species, and reaching out and sort of advancing these conversations with the Newmarket Conservation Commission has been on our list of things to do or get back on for a while. So that's what I'm doing here tonight. So first, just 30 seconds, the Orion Society, the group that I work for, we're a nonprofit organization that specializes in conserving critical habitat for rare reptiles and amphibians. Most of our work is in the southeastern United States. I'm based in Vermont, and I'm kind of like in charge of our much smaller northeastern operations, which at least up until this point have been focused on wood turtle and Blanding's turtle conservation efforts. Oh, I took too long. What happened here? Nope, okay, we're good. I know not to stay on one slide for more than 20 seconds now, which will help you with time management. So, yeah, that's in a nutshell. Although most of our work is focused on indigo snake, back there, indigo snake conservation and gopher tortoises. My expertise is really on the more freshwater turtle side of things. So, just to give you a brief idea of what I want to talk to you about tonight, I'll get through this in about 20 minutes, including what I've already spent talking about. I understand most people don't really have a firm understanding of just turtles as a whole or what species we have in the area, so I just have to do a rapid fire tour of the southern New Hampshire turtles, and then the species of concern that I'm most interested in, and then we'll spend the rest of the time talking about Blanding's turtle, their basic ecology, their threats, and then some more locally specific things that will be sort of like a way of starting that conversation with the commission. And then just depending on how much time we have, I'm happy to answer questions or talk a little more informally after that. So with the more common turtles, I think probably everyone in this room has seen a snapping turtle at some point in their lives. They are by far the largest freshwater turtle in New England. And as far as field marks, there's not much to look at. It's just a big, ugly turtle. It tends to all be one color, either gray or brown. Sometimes they're a little on the pinker side. And they very rarely leave the water. Except during the spring when they come out to lay their eggs. They don't even come out to bask that often or sun themselves the way that other turtles do. And when they're on land, they of course are very defensive, capable of defending themselves, wide gape, powerful jaws. In water, they're just ugly puppy dogs that will do whatever they can to avoid humans. And it's just very different to see them in the water and see them running away from you as when you see them on land, when they're unable to flee and instead they'll turn and face you. Usually it's when they're laying eggs. And unfortunately, where snapping turtles and many other turtles end up laying their eggs are just sunny areas along the edges of roads. They're not equipped to deal with traffic. Their shells protect them from native predators. Cars, not so much, and because roadsides look like such great places to lay eggs, these can be places where a lot of these turtles end up getting killed, Blanding's turtles included. I personally get asked a lot, are snapping turtles dangerous? Usually it's when someone finds one in their swimming pond for the first time in 20 years. That turtle's probably been there the entire time and it wasn't a problem until someone actually saw it. So I just, FYI, I recently wrote this blog post, Are Snapping Turtles Dangerous? You can read many of my posts on the Orion Society website under the Faces of the Forest section. Painted turtles, these are probably one of the prettier turtles. They are by far the most abundant turtle throughout most of New England. They get 6 or 7 inches in length. Their shell is sort of like black or brown on top and surrounded by these brilliant red markings, red stripes on the legs, yellow stripes on the face. And this is the turtle that if you've ever had the experience of like just overlooking a lake or a pond and there's a rock or a log sticking out of the water and it is covered in turtles in New Hampshire, those are almost always going to be painted turtles. They are pretty much everywhere if there's standing water. So those were the two like really common turtles around here. The species that I'm personally more interested in are of course the ones where there's conservation need. And that would be the spotted turtle, top left, a small black turtle covered in yellow spots. They inhabit shallow wetlands with a lot of emergent vegetation, and they spend a bit of time on land as well. The wood turtle, which is the one that I spend most of my time thinking about, they're more of a river valley turtle that spends half of their time in streams and half of their time foraging on land, especially in floodplains and the surrounding foothills. They end up in agricultural settings quite a bit foraging, which is one of the bigger threats for wood turtle populations on top of just traffic and cars. And then of course the Blanding's turtle, which is what I want to spend the rest of the time talking about, the goofy looking turtle with the yellow chin. So Blanding's turtles, there are a few things that kind of set them apart. What do they look like, make them very easy to identify. They have a relatively long neck compared to any of our other turtles. Their shell gets up to about 10 inches in length. The top of their shell is sort of like a dark color with a lot of brilliant yellow, either spots or striations. And you can get that same sort of yellow reticulated pattern on the top of their head. But then the thing that really stands out the most is that chin and the lower neck, just that bright yellow. No other turtle has that sort of contrast from like top and bottom. I've even heard some people refer to them as smiling turtles. It's a local name you get in some places. I don't know if you get that here in southern New Hampshire. And one of the most impressive things about many of these turtles, Blanding's included, is just how long they live. It's really difficult to know when you catch a turtle how old is it. You have to know how old it was like decades ago when it was young, and you can actually tell like, oh, this is a 6-year-old turtle, and then recapture that turtle 82 years later. Something like that has happened and allowed us to now know that in the wild they live at least 88 years. But they certainly could live longer. Box turtles are another local species, much less common. And they've been confirmed over 100 years old in the wild. So just very, very long-lived animals. And in a natural setting, their survival rates, for the adults anyway, are very, very high. Eggs and hatchlings are fodder for everything. Even chipmunks will eat them. But if they can get to adulthood, they have a very good shot of living another 60 years. Cars and tractors into the mix, in which case they live much less than that. And it's that longevity and the high survival rates that are absolutely critical to their population viability. So throughout their entire range, and I'll show you a map in a moment, Blanding's turtles are in decline. They've really taken some pretty hard hits over the last really century, and as a result, every single state in the Northeast where they occur, they're either threatened or endangered, so really high priority species for conservation efforts. And that decline is really a result of the sorts of changes we've made to the landscape, fragmentation of the terrestrial environment especially, and separating the different wetlands that they have to move between throughout the year. So their actual range, we think of them as having like 2 separate areas. There's the Great Lakes Midwest population, which covers a really vast area. Those turtles are genetically distinct from the ones that we have in the Northeast, which, with the exception of a couple scattered populations, it's basically like if you were to draw a 100-mile circle around the city of Boston, that's where all the Blanding's turtles are. That's also, on the entire East Coast, an area with some of the highest pressure for development, some of the highest traffic loads. So if you're a turtle that has to spend a lot of time moving around in a terrestrial environment, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's just a really rough place to have your entire range. circle around the city of Boston. Southeastern New Hampshire happens to be have the largest chunk of Blanding's turtle range throughout the Northeast. So this is the spot that is really critical for these turtles. So their actual ecology, their biology, where they live. This is really a wetland species, but it's not just like one wetland isn't enough for Blanding's turtles. Not even a single Blanding's turtle. They really need complexes of multiple wetlands in close proximity to one another. Those wetlands could be deep marshes, the edges of lakes and ponds, river valleys or riparian wetlands, vernal pools. There's really very few types of wetlands they won't use, but what they need are like a lot of emergent vegetation and relatively shallow water spread throughout. This is just another example of a type of wetland where you might see Blanding's turtles. Not really much in the way of open water, but it is wet in there and a lot of vegetation. So this aerial photo, which is not from too far away from here, is just a good example of the sorts of places where you might find Blanding's turtle. So we have a whole bunch of different wetlands all close together with intact forest separating those wetlands. And the turtles are going to move back and forth from one wetland to another throughout the summer, crossing forested habitat. They'll cross open habitat too, but they're really adapted to being in that forested landscape and moving between the different wetlands. Habitat connectivity, forest and wetland is like really the number one thing to try to conserve if you're thinking about protecting Blanding's turtle populations. There are a few other things that they need. First and foremost is going to be their nesting habitat. Like many other turtles, they're just looking for open, sunny areas, good sun exposure, warm soils. But they have a special affinity for sandy soils, which you have a lot of in southeastern New Hampshire. They'll lay their eggs typically from the end of May until early July. The precise timing might vary from year to year, just depending on the weather conditions at any given moment. But historically, when these turtles could get out of the water and move miles on land without crossing roads, they'd have good nesting habitat close enough for them and be able to survive. But now that we've fragmented the landscape and kind of boxed them into these wetlands, they don't necessarily have those wide, open, sandy areas close to the wetlands. And if they are close, there might be something separating the nesting habitat from the turtles. And as a result, these turtles are laying eggs on roadsides or in residential areas where they're at high risk of being either hit by cars, harassed by dogs, and their eggs and hatchlings are, they're going to have to face far more predators like raccoons, chipmunks, things that are very common in these more suburban or agricultural landscapes where humans are, have the greatest impact. So there are these open sandy areas near Blanding's turtle wetlands. It is like imperative to that species that we do whatever we can to maintain that habitat. And if it's missing, what can we do to add that habitat to their to what's available to them, so they can actually complete their life cycle without getting squished by a car. This is just an example of the distances that 4 Blanding's turtles travel to lay their eggs. This is in upstate New York. And what you're seeing here, each color represents a different turtle. And where they converge at the top under that black spot is where all 4 of these turtles laid their eggs. All those squiggly lines, those are between 3/4 and 2 miles of travel that the turtles took to get to that nesting spot.
Oh my gosh.
And then they went back to whatever their preferred foraging wetlands were. And some of them traveled overland to get to that nesting habitat. So they'll definitely travel. And if nesting habitat is limited, then like that one spot that's left over is where almost all of the turtles are going to go, which is what was the case here. So, like general threats for these turtles, none of this is going to be foreign to you. Development and habitat loss is, of course, really, really big. High levels of adult nest and hatchling, predation, really that's due to subsidized predators. Excuse me. In-person talking over a year, it seems so. My voice is a little out of practice. Roadkill, of course, we talked about. Off-road vehicles can be a big cause of concern in certain cases, especially because those open sandy areas happen to be hot spots for ATV use. So you've got the turtles and ATVs converging on the same spot. Bad news for the turtles. And then there's also this international black market, people collecting turtles to sell overseas as pets. Blanding's turtles is maybe not as much of a concern for some of the other rare turtles, but it is a concern. And consequently, throughout their entire range. These turtles are in decline, including in southern New Hampshire. And the Newmarket populations, the ones that we have right around here, they're no exception to these general trends, the threats that these turtles are facing throughout their entire range. This is just an example of a development that recently went up near my house. By far, especially in places, that 100-mile circle around Boston, there's just such a high pressure to develop whatever land hasn't been conserved already, that we're just losing ground every single year. So shifting to more of the site specifics of what's going on around here in the Newmarket area, this is just an aerial photo of some of the wetlands that we know have Blanding's turtles, some of the areas where research and conservation efforts have been targeted. And all of these yellow roads, which are the ones named in the bottom left, Ash Swamp Road, Grant Road, Camp Road, Oaklands, and Mast Road, these are all roads that have documented roadkill that occur, multiple years. We've seen the roadkill there time after time again. And I think the Ash Swamp site is one that you've probably talked about quite a bit in I guess not this room, but the room downstairs, as one that's a constant source of mortality for Blanding's turtles. So just zooming in here, Josh caught me up a little bit on the history of this Ash Swamp Road site, especially I think this is the spot where the river passes under the road, where there's been a long history of beavers causing issues. The road is a history of flooding, constant beaver management, and I believe he had suggested, and you've spoken in the past about upgrading the culverts there to facilitate turtle movement under the road, so the turtles have a way to actually get from one side to the other without needing to cross. And in a situation like this, actually disturbing the water levels and removing a beaver dam during certain times of the year, especially if it's like late in the season as the turtles are getting ready to overwinter, that also could be a source of disturbance for them if the water level were to drop right as they're starting to hunker down in those spots where they're going to overwinter underwater. So just a few general things to talk about, not just this site specifically, but just anywhere that we know roadkill is a problem for these turtles. Whenever possible, resisting the urge to upgrade those roads from dirt to pavement or increase the speed limits would be very helpful, just in terms of not making the roadkill problem worse. In certain cases, and this has been done in other areas, I don't know as much about southeastern New Hampshire, seasonal use of speed bumps have been used, just putting speed bumps out during the time of year that females are looking for places to lay their eggs, so May 25, June 10th. That can just slow people down and get them to actually obey speed limits when it's most important that, or when they're most likely to be actually driving these roads at the same time the turtles route. Upgrading culverts to allow that under road passage, of course, that's going to be a huge help. I understand that can be also very expensive. If there is a need to remove beaver dams or notch dams to lower water levels, it'd be very important to do that as early in the summer as possible. Maybe not do that after mid-October, early November, once the turtles have actually started to hunker down and they're in the water wherever they're going to be for the rest of the winter. Thankfully, beavers aren't building dams during the winter, but there are instances where they might have built a dam in the summer and now it's a problem. So being proactive about that, doing whatever needs to be done in the summer would be very helpful. There's also, of course, beaver deceivers or beaver baffles that can be useful in many situations to just decide for the beavers how high the water level is going to be, so there isn't a constant need for management. I understand that maybe something that this town has some experience with, maybe not as successful as it could have been. What I can add to that is the actual technology and designs have evolved quite a bit in the past decade, and the pros that actually do that work are really good at it now. Whereas a decade ago, it was kind of like this relatively new thing, and there's a lot of trial and error. And when it comes to actual culvert upgrades, New Hampshire Fish and Game, they don't have the money right now at this moment, but they are anticipating, if a grant proposal goes through, that very soon they'll have funding to assist towns with the planning stage and actually coming up with the engineering designs to bring those projects to a shovel-ready status. And then at that point, the next step is just find the money to do the upgrade, and you're ready to go. Off-road vehicles, these are especially a problem in the turtles' nesting habitat. So I doubt my laser pointer is going to work on the TV, but Here we have an example of a nesting site right next to a wetland, and there's a trail that passes right between the wetland site, and you can actually see these circles on the nesting habitat where four-wheelers have just been whipping around and doing donuts. This is what we want to avoid in critical Blanding's turtle nesting habitat. Josh and I honestly aren't that familiar with how much ATV use there is in Newmarket in the Blanding's turtle areas. So, maybe after we wrap up here, if we have just a few minutes, I'd love to hear from you. Just like, what does it look like on the ground here? How much ATV use is there? Is it a potential problem for Blanding's turtles? And there are a few things that we can do to address this issue that kind of come in like different tiers. First and foremost, if at all possible, just avoiding having new ATV trails or rerouting existing ones so they steer clear of at least 650 feet away from important Blanding's turtle wetlands, and especially if those trails cross between a wetland and a nesting site. You can also do more restricted seasonal closures. So just the nesting season, May 25 to July 10, that at least is protecting the adult females. So even if their eggs get crushed later in the season, she's still there to lay eggs for the next 50 to 60 years if she doesn't get hit later. And then wherever possible, if there are ATV trails that are problematic, working with landowners to either reroute those trails or consider just closing them off, or even just enforcing existing ATV bans. I know there are a lot of places where, in theory, ATVs aren't supposed to be, but they end up anyway. Things that would really help address this issue. Sorry, I got tripped up by the same slide here. Different text. Another issue with that nesting habitat is really just the lack of good nesting sites. So, creating that new nesting habitat is something that can be done to address that issue in places like Newmarket, where maybe there was nesting habitat and it's been developed, and now what are the turtles going to do? We have to give them something. So there are a few different things that you can do. First and foremost, probably the easiest thing, and this should always be done in coordination with New Hampshire Fish and Game because it gets kind of complicated, you can create nesting habitat. And sometimes that's just as simple as dumping a pile of sand in a small opening near a Blanding's turtle wetland. But if you want to actually get like a nice piece of habitat that's like big and going to be there for a while, converting log landings or patch cuts into nesting habitat is relatively easy. Scarify the earth, do a little bit of herbaceous vegetation control on a periodic basis, or adding that sand that isn't going to be as good for the plants to grow in can certainly provide that for the turtles. And whenever or wherever landowners are actually seeing Blanding's turtles laying eggs in their yard or anywhere else, getting that information and that observation to New Hampshire Fish and Game so they know where the turtle's nesting that's not good, and then how habitat between that spot and the wetlands so the turtles find something better on their way to that backyard or roadside edge. And this is just an example of a log landing that's now being managed as Blanding's turtle nesting habitat. I showed you this image a few minutes ago, the wetland complex a little to our north. This image was taken 4 or 5 years ago. However, since then, there have been a series of patch cuts. These patch cuts were put in not for the purpose of Blanding's turtle nesting, but now that they're there, at least 3 or 4 of them are being managed as Blanding's turtle nesting habitat. So there wasn't much to do. There's this commercial operation that's harvesting the timber, and then you add on top of that to bring it the rest of the way into functional Blanding's turtle nesting habitat. And of course, like development, I can't say that enough time. Land conservation, especially through easements that are permanent, attached to deeds, are really the #1 tool that we have to maintain the habitat that exists currently. And my understanding is this general area has overall pretty high pressure for development. So really anything we can do to increase the amount of conserved land is going to be really big for these turtles. Thankfully, in the past 10 years, the core of the Blanding's turtle habitat in this area hasn't changed all that much. There have been a few very small developments, only a few acres that the places that I've examined. However, in that same period of time, there have been about 825 acres of new conserved land added to the matrix. So, on one hand, it seems like we're gaining territory here, but on the other hand, over half of the Blanding's turtle core habitat here still remains unconserved, and that's just in the hot spots. If you pan out to where Blanding's turtles occur throughout the entire town and surrounding towns, it's way less than half has been conserved. It's a small fraction. So there's lots of ground to gain. And yeah,
I'm going to be talking about that later.
So where I fit into all of this is we have this list of high priority Blanding's turtle sites throughout the Northeast. That's 5 different states. And if someone gave me $5 million tomorrow and said, go fix Blanding's turtle habitat, without some sort of guidance about where to spend that money, you can just spread it out over all of the places where Blanding's turtles are known to occur and not really make a difference to any single population. But if you take that same $5 million and target it to, say, the top 10 sites or the top 30 sites, you can actually start to make a really meaningful difference and conserve entire populations of Blanding turtles in the places that are most critical to the species at a regional scale. And there are a total of 36 of these high priority sites throughout the Northeast. 10 of them are in southeastern New Hampshire, far away from where we're standing or sitting here tonight. So this is a very critical region for Blanding's turtle conservation, not just New Hampshire, but also Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maine. So this is just a really, really critical spot. So just a couple slides left here. Resources available to help landowners or towns conserve and restore habitat on their land for Blanding's turtles. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that at some point in the near future, New Hampshire Fish and Game expects to have funding to help with planning and engineering designs for infrastructure upgrades to help wildlife, including Blanding's turtles. The state can also assist with enforcing ATV bans on private property or on town properties. There's a site nearby where we're working with another conservation commission and school board to gate a site that already isn't supposed to have ATVs, but they go there anyway. And we've seen turtle nests, Blanding's turtles nests, just like dug out of the ground by ATV tracks. NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, has resources to help private landowners, especially in working landscapes, either farms or forestry operations, to implement Blanding's turtle restoration and management practices, including nesting habitat creation, and properties that don't qualify for help through NRCS because maybe they're not a farm, but you have an interested landowner. In those cases, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partners sometimes can step in and do the exact same sort of work. They're very flexible in what they can do if there's a need to do it and the tangible benefits. So just another thing, zooming into the northeastern map of where these turtles occur, private landowners, like if you live in this area, anybody, and you know you have Blanding's turtles on your property, or if you think you have really good habitat for them, you're close to like big wetland complexes, really the best thing you can do is reach out to New Hampshire Fish and Game and say, like, this is what I've got, this is what I've seen, what can I do on my property to help turtles along, if the Blanding's turtle is even here. And to that end, getting in touch with Fish and Wildlife or myself, Josh's contact information is up on the screen now. There's also a reptile and amphibian reporting program in the state of New Hampshire, not just for Blanding's turtles, but for any reptile and amphibian, but especially rare ones. If you see one, you can go to the state Fish and Wildlife website and submit that observation. Maybe there's a Blanding's turtle hotspot that nobody knows about, and we're not going to know about it unless those records are submitted. And I'm always happy just to answer questions or steer people in the right direction. Like I said, I don't work for the state. I can't do anything on their behalf, but I'm good at pointing people in the right direction. So that's what I have for you tonight, and happy to chat for as long as you're interested.
Question?
Can we get a copy of this?
Yes. Yes.
So I think on the Ashmore culvert, Rick is looking into a beaver season with somebody that you're.
Well, so here's where we are. We're trying to set up a meeting actually with Josh. We've been trying to coordinate our schedules. We also were contacted by some other groups that have some funding for crossings, so they're going to try and attend that as well. And love to have you along, Kylie, as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The challenge with that crossing is it's actually a little bit up the road from the Pecassac River that you showed, and the challenge is it's like they cross in multiple places there. It's not like one culvert where they all cross. They kind of go across a general area. It's like the road is almost like going across this system, and they run into it in different places. And so we're trying to figure out, is there a way to build something in addition to the beaver problem, but also that would create them across multiple places? Because one of the questions, I guess, is if you build it, will they come, right? Because they don't necessarily want to go through a passage. They might want to go over the road because it's almost at the same level as what I was told.
Yeah, and that's a common problem, and I think this is where if Fish and Game gets the grant that they're going for, they can be even more helpful, is there are like tested and effective ways of guiding turtles or other wildlife to those passages. Sometimes there are additional maintenance costs because it basically involves like building a retaining wall or constructing a fence of some sort along the road so that there are only a few places where they can get to the road, and those happen to be where the underpasses are. I've seen different designs in different areas with mixed levels of success. Sometimes all it takes is like a 10-inch concrete barrier along the edge of the road, so there's like a drop-off they can't get over. But unless there's unless the town road crews have the awareness and funding to do some upkeep and maintenance, eventually that 10-inch retaining wall becomes a 5-inch retaining wall, and then 3 inches, and then the turtles are back over it again. But there are designs in a variety of areas that have been used to address that problem. Just don't let them over in the other spot. Have the local knowledge to say like, okay, this is a 1 mile stretch of road. That's prohibitively expensive to do that on, or is it just like a few spots where?
Probably closer to like 200 feet, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
and
that might
that's
be a
more in the
good
realm
estimate.
of like, okay, we could actually do something here, and even if the price seems like ridiculously high, that's what grants are for.
Right. But yeah, and then the beaver issue is also like
Right,
it's
right.
been that dam has been removed once, I know, this summer, and then the water level dropped way down. I understand it's actually already been rebuilt and the water's rising back up again. So
Yeah,
it's
they're a determined species.
yeah.
As our turtles, they just aren't quite as creative.
But there are a couple other sites that you might want to reach out to some of the other land conservation groups. So Southeast Land Trust has, like you said, created some easements with private property owners. At least one I know of that's close by that we don't know. I don't think it was ever determined if it was being used by Blanding's turtle, but it has it's a large wetlands complex. There is sandy soil nearby there. I just don't know that you guys, Fish and Game, ever found any turtles there or not.
Yeah, you said that was the Southeast Land Trust?
Yeah. Trust Wayne's right behind you. He's from Southeast Land Trust. Nature Conservancy also owns land here. I don't know if there's any Blanding's habitat in that area. That's closer to the Tuttle Swamp.
I'll need to re-remind myself on some of that. And actually
Yeah, you
conserve
can
land
go on
database.
Granite. If you're familiar with NH Granite
Yeah.
system, it'll show all the properties that are conserved on there.
Right, and I know Southeast Land Trust has some holdings here that
Yeah.
are Blanding's turtle habitat as well as other populations or other
Yeah, but
other spots nearby.
Nature Conservancy has their office here in Newmarket too, so for New Hampshire, so there.
So, oh yeah.
I was gonna say, maybe if Joshua was coming out that day, if he's had time, it'd be nice Newmark's not very big, it'd be nice to go around with him to say, this is another hot spot, what's the land ownership pattern, because
Right.
town owns land, there's private land, there's a lot of conserved land in Newmarket, there's a lot of private land still, but it'd be nice to know, and I know you don't wanna stay in public where all these hot spots are, because,
Right.
it's.
Keep some level of
Yeah,
vagueness.
so it'd be nice if we could,
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess before I leave, just two quick questions. And either you have the answers now, or you can think about it and have the answers when we meet with Josh, whenever that happens. But any information you can provide about like how prevalent ATV use is in Blanding's turtle areas, and also if you know of any particular private landowners that have forested land near those wetlands that might be willing to entertain the notion of habitat management or conservation, those are, or even if they'd be willing to sell land to the state, those would all be things that would be very useful to know about as these conversations continue.
I think we have at least one landowner that's served that we should come.
didn't put parcel maps up
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I think there are, I think there's at least one area, but we don't have a lot of ATVs in the market,
Yeah.
but there's some, and I think some of it could be.
Yeah, I didn't see on my maps any obvious trails or even like big sandy open areas that would attract ATVs. Which one? Yeah. Well, for the specifics, we can save that for follow-up conversations.
I have two I think they're short questions. I don't want to belittle, I mean, it's your passion, so to say, this is a short question, it's like, no, like, that could be a PhD, so.
I will try my best to provide a short answer.
You said May 25th to July 10th is the window of the period when the females are laying eggs. Over time, are we seeing that window shift because of the climate change, or?
I think the amount of time we've been paying attention to that seasonal pattern for Blanding's turtles maybe isn't long enough.
Not long enough to tell
witness
you.
it. I mean, it does, on warm years, they nest earlier. This year, they nested pretty early in the season. It was a very dry spring. I think it's good they didn't wait, because then we had a very wet early summer.
Okay, yeah.
I did, I don't know about southern New Hampshire. So it varies based on weather and, projecting how things would look in the future. It wouldn't surprise me if nesting season starts earlier and earlier, if warming trends continue.
Gotcha. And the phrase subsidized predators, can
Yeah,
you
thank you.
go into that a little bit?
So, subsidized predators would be any sort of predator that has benefited from human land use and their populations are higher than they otherwise would have been in natural settings. These are things like raccoons, foxes, skunks, and a few others. And even though they're getting fat off of human garbage and grain storage, they're still predators and eating their natural foods, which includes young turtles and their eggs. And just to provide an example, this spring I was at a site in southern New York watching Blanding's turtles nest. And at this particular site, it's right along the edge of the school, and there's a teacher there that will go out with students or former students to cage the Blanding's turtle nest, put a protective cover over them to stop raccoons from eating their eggs. And when they go out, are on the edges of the bushes, like watching the turtles lay their eggs, and in the absence of putting those covers over the nests, the vast majority of those nests are eaten by raccoons before the next morning. They're just like literally taking the eggs out from under the turtles. And at that particular site, without human intervention, there would be zero nesting success. And that's not a natural setting. There's way too many raccoons, and there are also too few places for the turtles to lay their eggs. So we get all the turtles going to one spot. Raccoons are clever, and they figure out where that spot is. They know what time to go, and they just wait for the turtles.
So the buffet dinner.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, we shouldn't even laugh, that was bad.
No, it is and you find a lot of turtles that are missing legs that typically have been chewed off by raccoons. The shell protects the guts and the head, but raccoons have very dexterous paws, and they're determined enough they can pry a leg out and chew on that.
I will say I heard a really remarkable story from Josh pre-COVID. I had a radio show with somebody else on Portsmouth Community Radio, and at the end it's like, okay, a meaningful story, that thing that you think about when you drove home from work, Josh, and the story he told about being up in Pittsburgh, and he's kayaking around and he wants to see where the turtles are, and it brought tears to my eyes. I'm not doing him any justice, though. But he said he spies a turtle, and it's like, it's just hauling. It's walking faster than the others, and he wants to see, like, oh, I got to watch this leg. And he's going to take pictures and document it. And as he got closer, he realized that turtle that was hauling the way she was a three-legged turtle, and was as fit as a fiddle and doing just fine. But the way he tells it's really special.
Yeah, no, three legs is fine for most turtles. I mean, you never know. They could, when they lose a limb, that's traumatic, and they can easily be killed by the infection, but only having 3 legs doesn't seem to be a big problem for them. I've seen, I know more about wood turtles, and I've seen at this point 6 wood turtles that were missing 2 legs,
No.
and 2 of those were missing their front legs. They just had like a shoulder, an elbow to help with like propping their shell over things. Those 2-legged turtles, I think to live very long, they need at least 1 front leg, but they can at least go a few years on no front legs, which is useful.
It makes us not want to complain when we have a little something wrong,
No, what I like to say is they're capable of enduring more things than most animals, most vertebrates. What they're not enduring are the changes we've made to their habitat. So we've introduced novel factors that they can't cope with. And as a whole, turtles, they evolve incredibly slowly. They haven't changed much in 100 million years. Evolving very slowly, they're responding to changes in their environment very slowly, and we're just changing things way too fast for them.
Thank you.
Can I ask one quick question? Have you ever seen, with log landings, have you ever seen them nest in wood chips? Or, because I've never seen them, it seems like the wood chips would be just as good as
Yeah,
sand.
they, at least for blandings, they're going to prefer the sandy soils.
Yeah.
I've seen other turtles lay eggs in wood chips.
Yeah.
I don't know how good it is for them. A perfect situation would be get some sand next to those wood chips, or rake a clearing somewhere.
Well, thank you so much, Kylie. We really appreciate you
Really
stepping up
great.
and stepping in.
We shall continue the conversation.
Yeah, I hope we'll see you out there and looking at these sites with us. That would be great. So
Safe drive back to
Couple
Vermont.
cards on the table for anybody that
why don't you?
wants to reach out to me.
Oh, that table.
Yeah, why don't you?
I'm over here getting my stuff.
This is more human contact.
Careful, the phone mic.
Great presentation, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Safe drive back.
Yeah, I had some other business down here, but now I am gonna do one thing at a time.
Yeah, make good use of the tank of the gas there. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Mark West is here to present. I'll see if I can. While he hands out his papers, I'll see if I can find anything about air conditioning. Why don't you go ahead and hand it? I'll be right back. I'm just gonna see if there's air conditioning.
Did you get the full application?
Yeah, it's
Site?
up there on the desk.
So I guess you guys can potentially share. He can share the big thing with you.
Thank you.
Got that, and you guys can share. He told me to make 3 sets.
We can share. We can
Sharing is
share.
caring. Okay.
Just fold it back a little bit so it'll flatten out.
I actually have a whole application if you want to look at pictures, but there's 26 attachments to this.
And a human to explain it all, so.
Now I know why the school committee wanted to meet in the basement.
Uh-oh.
Oh, don't worry about it. No stress. Okay.
Okay, sorry. I'll see what I can do about that too. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get anything done on that front. Mark West is here from West Environmental to present on a proposal for a development at 34 Smith Garrison Road that they are looking for us to comment on their wetland application.
Correct. So
Yes.
this project started, you have 2 pages in the smaller version. One is the existing conditions. So this house has a lot of really large pine trees, but it also has a lawn going down towards the water and just a little bit of shrubby area closer to the water. All the proposed work is in previously developed upland tidal buffer zone. Originally, he just looked, actually what he originally did was put in a tiny, a few stones down and built a little fire pit without a permit, okay? Then he realized he needed to get an after-the-fact permit, and he wanted to build a nicer terrace that is pervious instead of impervious, and it's in the same location because most of the in front of the house has pretty significant slope all the way down to the tidal wetland. The tidal wetland itself is a band of salt marsh along the Lamprey River that then goes into mudflat. There's a little finger of hydric soils that shows on there along that boundary. And so when he started learning from me how complex the wetland permitting process is, he said, well, he was thinking of doing a few other things down the road in a few years. I said, well, you probably should do whatever you want to do now, because you're going through a permitting process that these new permits are way more complicated, way more attachments, way more information, and you might as well do everything at once. So he added a terrace. And so if you switch to the second page, you'll see hatched areas that show you the terrace areas. And he in front of the house is like gravel with a little deck that comes out, and that area, well, I'd like to build, instead of having gravel, which is all getting grown in, I'd like to build a pervious terrace there. It's right next to the house, it's already disturbed, and he also wanted to put a hot tub on top of it. So I was like, let's hear it all. He also has steps from that house and upper area that are all on angle and falling apart. So he said, I'd like to replace those steps and make it safer. So all of this added up, and then we got to the part of the permitting process and going through that, and the new regulations require that you provide mitigation for any work, permanent impact within the 75-foot buffer to the tidal wetland. So that new rule, we had already planned on landscaping, and you can see on the plan, I only made 2 plans for you. If I can hold this other one up, sorry. We thought we were mitigating here. But, so, there's a whole set of plantings. You can see the terrace, plantings, and plantings in here. And those were already proposed as mitigation, but they only got us 84 square feet of impact mitigation. And there's 380 square feet, because the other thing you should know is permanent impact includes changing any elevation. So even if you take a lawn and make it 2 feet higher, that's considered permanent impact. So what ended up happening is we got 84 square feet of credit there, and then he had to pay over $1,700 in the ARM fund fee for the terrace. Only for this right here. All of this is outside the 75 feet, and some of it is outside the 100 feet. So the new rules are accumulating any impacts near that 75 foot are costing money. And he really, if you look at the slopes here, this is the one flat in the lawn there where he could do it. So that's where it is. He also wanted to be a little near the water and look down over the river and stuff like that. So no trees are being cut at all for this. We actually are reducing the impervious area on the lot through this project, but there's a whole set of documents, including the functional assessment. Now they want you to look at the, I looked at the 4-foot sea level rise to show that it doesn't impact our project, because you can see how steep it is. This terrace, little patio is about 10 feet above the tide line, and everything up here is 20 feet above the tide line. And so we've got we also, there wasn't salt marsh migration issues because it's steep. There aren't floodplain impacts because it's steep. So all of these items are sort of not a big issue. We did have to show and you want to know how serious we're being as far as care, because he's like, any impact, okay, if he, any impact is part of the filing fee, because the filing fee was about $700, but we had to show this temporary impact. He is using an electric wheelbarrow to do all the work. So on one of the other plans, I think this one, you can see this route. So there's already a gravel area right off the road. From that gravel area, he can have everything unloaded there, and then he can wheelbarrow everything down to do the work. It's really just getting soil out, the topsoil out, getting sand in place, and then putting the terrace stone on top of that for the impervious. So all of it can be done. I've never seen an electric wheelbarrow, but there you go. So that's the overall project. We've sent the package to the Lamprey River Advisory Committee, both digital and paper. I don't think they met. And we consulted Stephanie Giolongo probably like 6 times to make sure we understood how all this, and we also had to consult Lori Summer to do the mitigation calculation. So, but at least this way, he's doing what he's gonna do and he'll be done. And he won't have to get any more permits. So that's all the plantings are native here, down anywhere in this zone. There's a few improved natives up in this part of the site. And the woman who actually did the plan, it was her first time doing a DES wetland plan, and she's a landscape architect, so
That's Elizabeth Dudley?
Yeah, we had a whole training session, and she's got lots of arrows. When I first started, there were probably about 50 more arrows on this plan. So we had to make it a little less intense. Each step, the type of thing is made and all that. So but you can see all the plantings, and if you guys have any questions about that, you can let me know. So.
Oh, where's the plantings on here?
This is the old one.
Right.
This is
I don't see.
One for their shoreline.
seems like that big plan, that seems to have more.
Some of these
Yeah.
are cultivars, and that's okay.
Native R's?
Up here,
Oh, yeah. No, down below.
I thought I got all those added there.
Well, on the list it says like, Southern Gentleman Winterberry.
That's up,
That's a
the
cultivar.
ones down here are not supposed to be that, the ones up top. So, that's the way it was supposed to be done. So I believe most of them should be up here, but I see one there, so.
Maybe just check that.
Yeah, it's really hard with landscape architects to get them away from
I know.
improved plants.
Yeah, I only see a Rosa rugosa listed here. Could I see that so I can look at the
The
plants?
Rosa rugosa is something, there's no Rosa rugosa planting.
No, it's existing. It's
Yeah.
right here labeled,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's already there.
Thank
And
you.
that's why I said, let's get rid of that and put this stuff in there.
Thank you.
So the patio with where the hot tub is gonna be, that was the fire pit? Or this
No,
circle?
the hot tub is right here.
The hot tub's here, but this is where the fire pit was?
Yeah, that little thing in the center. is the
Was
fire
where pit, so
Yeah.
this is gonna be where the new area is gonna be?
Right.
Okay.
And this is the grading around that area.
And this currently is, what is this currently?
Lawn.
Lawn? So it's gonna have rock that's pervious, is that what you're saying?
Well, you have to put sand underneath it, and then you put stones with spacing so the water can infiltrate. And they have a certain amount of, she has a spec sheet on the last.
So there's all this relaxing going on, but there's two that he has to share to keep it a right height. Thank you, good list, thank you.
This goes with the set.
Any other questions? No?
Thanks for pointing out the increased permeable surfaces.
Yeah, you don't even wanna try to use pervious anymore, anywhere in 100 feet.
Yeah.
So this is a request for our support of this expedited application, right? That's
Whatever you do, whether you're no comment, or you don't object,
But
or.
this is an expedited request, right? The
Oh, no,
application,
this
no?
is not, this doesn't qualify as expedited.
Oh, okay. So you're just looking for a comment. It doesn't really.
We wanted to make sure, since you put all this effort in, that you guys, your questions are answered, so that you don't send in a letter and then we have to formally resubmit additional things and all that. If you have additional stuff you need, I'll know and I can get right on it. Because once it gets accepted, you gotta keep it moving along.
That's okay to me, I just asked you if they could not use cultivars. I'm just being-
I only said it 3 times.
Well, that was my question too. It has an asterisk and says needed for pollination for the other one. So that seemed curious.
They can find native cultivars.
Yeah, I know.
Some feedback.
A revision that will work on right away, because I thought I had weeded all those out several drafts ago.
No fun.
So it sounds like if we got that revised application, then we could write a letter of support.
It'll just be the revised sheet 3. I think we should get it right, so it's LA 3. Right here, this is the landscaping one, LA 3.
Yep.
LA 3, there.
We don't have
No.
Yep. So I don't know if we have to wait till the next meeting then to review that at that point.
I can email it to you tomorrow.
I would trust you to figure that out.
If you wanna make it a condition or whatever.
Yeah, I would prefer to word it that way, so I'd be willing to make a motion to support it with the condition that that change is made and we get it submitted, amended.
You'll get it right away.
And then with that, we would write the letter of support.
Okay?
So that's my motion. Do I have a second on that? All in favor? Okay. Thanks. So,
Can I have that extra copy?
yes.
Oh, no, you can have these are plans. Those are for you too. I just wanted to get.
Okay.
Maybe it can
Thank
stay
you
with the
very
whole
much for your
packet.
time.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes on June 10th. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
I wasn't here, but I have a question. I don't know if it's here or in the treasurer's report, but the minutes talk about approving the scholarship for the student, but there's no funding associated with that. We haven't approved any funding, so did you?
Can't remember how all that.
Yeah, we did, and we received only one application at the very last minute of the process. So, yeah, we got one applicant who met the criteria. We went ahead and,
I'll just get the date.
yeah. But I haven't heard back from that applicant to give us any information so that we could cut them a check. So, but that's a good question, Ellen. So I'll follow up with,
The letter was impressive.
Yeah,
by the way. I just
they
wanna
did a
go on
good
record
job.
saying that.
I wish it hadn't taken so much work to get that application. So you're saying that you don't think that's in the minutes?
No, I'm pretty sure, I remember we talked about it, we never approved it. Pretty sure. We might want to do that.
Okay, why don't we do that when we get to our treasurer's report, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we did because I've been tracking them. I know we talked about it and then you said, I don't know, I just remember we had approved it.
Okay. All right. So, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 10th?
I move to approve the minutes from June 10th.
Do I have a second?
I'm used to looking like this, like where's the talking screen? Oh, she's over there.
She's over here.
Oh, well then I'll second it.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Okay. All right. Let's go on to, I will do a combined in effort to save. I'm going to do, well, Sam told me to do a riverfront. So he gave me the notes, but you're here, so if you want to, okay. So on outside of that, for chair report, I have really only a couple things. One, I was contacted by a person who was applying to be an Eagle Scout, very competent young woman who is interested in being involved in, I'm looking over at Ellen, a trail work on Heron Point.
Oh, excellent.
And very, very competent person is my assessment of her. So I think she would do a good job if we could work with her to do that.
First young woman Eagle Scout.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think she sounds like she would be a good person for the project. We had one contact with a person regarding invasive plants that are bordering along the Boulder Drive served space, so we're reaching out to that citizen to find out more information and see if we can connect them with the Boulder Drive Homeowners Association, so if they can work together to resolve that. So those were two citizen contacts I had. The third thing is I am working to set up an appointment with Josh Mergersley.
Megacy.
Megacy.
Rhymes with legacy.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
how he
Thank
tells
you.
me to remember it.
Megacy, to visit our Blanding Turtle site. Now,
That's awesome.
currently, Josh has been out. The most recent date he suggested to me was July 26th. I am gone that date. However, if I have anyone else who could be there, and Ellen's raising her hand.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I will
Love
include
to.
you on the email back. Yeah, to Josh. I had suggested like an after work time, but if you guys have any availability earlier, you can suggest that. Jeff Goldknopf was also on that. Jeff is on vacation as well, but I'll keep him on there because he knows the location very well. And other person who Melissa also knows is Colin Lawson, who was providing some technical expertise potentially to this project. and possible funding. So hopefully we can get
Yeah,
him to attend.
That would be great.
So that's it for chair report. So here is Sam's report on at least I thought I had it all set to go here. There it is. Okay. So a lot of activity by the Riverfront Advisory Committee. They met with DES regarding the Coastal Resiliency Grant on Tuesday and plan to submit that this month. They'll hear back in late August. They're continuing to try and discuss the conceptual project with the abutters, stakeholders, and other committees to get buy-ins. That includes Lamprey River Advisory Committee. And I think Del Pike, who's on the committee, was going to see if he could go to the next LRAC meeting, which I am not going to be at. Let's see. No formal ask of the Conservation Commission, but at some point they probably will be looking for us and the town to see what kind of contribution we can make. Obviously, because with these kinds of grants and funding, you have to come to the table with some money, right? So, but it sounds like a lot of good progress is being made by this group, and I'm excited to hear more as it develops. So, treasurer report.
So, I sent you the finance reports from Carol, and then I started doing this little summary sheet, that helps me keep my head. So, we ended the fiscal year June 30th, and the general fund, for the year we did $2,900, and we ended up with a balance of $257. So I assume that just goes rolls back to the general fund, so we're within budget. In the conservation fund, the overall balance is $171,466.84. And in some of that's the Shanda fund, and then so the conservation fund amount is $166,702.38. And let's see. We still have outstanding the Heron Point Management Plan for $2,500, and we have a balance of $480 in the Wigan Fund interpretive signs, and we're making some more signs for that, so that we'll probably end up using most of that money. I have a couple of other things. Well, one is the scholarship. We should vote on that. The NHACC dues are a little confusing because we voted last November to pay what we thought were last year's, but then somehow they made it for our 2021 fees and says we owe 20. Is that how you read the email?
Yeah, I was confused. I feel like I almost need to call them and ask them because
I think we've paid, but we need to approve like another that we paid it again. But I think it was for last year. It's just a little confusing.
So you think we don't owe any dues, or we do?
I think Carol paid it, but I
Right.
don't think we.
I
mean,
think
if the
Carol
auditors look
paid it.
back and say, "Did you approve it?" I don't think we've approved. We didn't approve for 2 years. We thought we approved for 2020, and we thought, well, now we should vote for 2021. She says, well, you actually paid 2021. You haven't paid 2020.
Oh, I see. That's
Their bookkeeping, so we just should clarify.
okay. So we should clarify that. What about the fishing derby? Did we see the money come out for that
Yeah,
yet?
fishing derby's been paid. Kevin
Okay.
Warren's been paid. We paid for some of the Wigan Farm signs, and we paid the $425 for 2020, but we didn't really approve that, I guess.
Okay.
We should probably just say we're approving the 2021 from our, and that will cover us.
Okay.
Because I think our motion last year was to pay the 2020 dues, and so now we should make a motion to pay the 2021 dues.
Right.
Okay.
And their emails have been tardy or delayed because of the work from home and who was part-time and when and who worked when.
And I have one more retroactive request. was like a big hole, so we figured we should fix it right away. So, I bought some supplies, which was $54.10, some of which are these structural screws, which we still have some left over, so we need them, so I can do this Eagle Scout, maybe. Anyway, if you'd be willing to reimburse me the $54.10.
By the way, thank you for your efforts over there, this past month or so.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we should get back out there, yeah. It's nice to get out.
Okay,
So you wanna go through those one at a time?
let's go through those motions one at a time. Let's start with NHCAA.
So we need a motion, I can make a motion to approve, $425 for the annual 2021 dues for NHACC membership. $425.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, second motion, I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of the $1,500 for the scholarship that has been awarded to Caden, and I'm trying to think of Caden's last name. Caden Corbin, thank you. Caden Corbin, at 21 graduate from Newmarket High School.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion that we approve $54.10 in reimbursement for Ellen Snyder's work on our footbridge at Wigan Farm.
Second.
As my daughter used to call it, the Troll Bridge.
That's cute.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, that's it, thank you.
All right. Town Council?
Yes, we're meeting less frequently because it's summer, and our last meeting was actually a pretty light meeting, so I don't have much to say. It's our first meeting in the chambers for many of us, and the big points of interest that are not specific to you, but you might care, were the swearing in of Chief Jordan to his position as chief. So it was a packed house for our first meeting in here, and then also Zachary left the town council and was thanked for his service, and it was Councilor Ward's first meeting. So just a lot of change up going on, but Councilor Ward will be taking over budget committee. So even though the council is still shaking up every few months, committee assignments have not changed.
Okay, thank you. And Jeff Goldknopf is not here. Excused absence. He is on vacation, I believe, family vacation. So let's go through Ellen and Melissa's stuff that they have under Wigan Farm.
Yeah, why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, it was really fun helping Ellen install those. I was basically just an extra set of hands, but she was awesome. And the signs look great. We had 10 signposts, but 8 signs. And so we I think that was the number, right? 10 by 8. Since the 2 other signposts were still in good shape, we decided it was a better idea to maybe add a couple and try to dig up the signposts that were in pretty good shape. So the 2 topics we decided on were history and ecology of rock walls, and then sort of mental and physical health and of getting out in nature. So I had hoped to have those drafted up by tonight's meeting, but I haven't had time, unfortunately. But I will get those out soon so everyone can take a look at them. I have the format that Ellen used, so it'll look the same as all of the other signs. And I've got some great resources too, some from Ellen and just some from my digging around. So I think this will be good.
Great.
Yeah, and then the other 2 we had talked about doing, these would be, I think the thought was to have them right before the pedestrian bridge and then up at the gate, and these are about pedestrians. It's so almost only, but then there's a snowmobile, so it's a little tricky, and no bikes essentially, and then getting dog walkers, and you know how we talked about whether we should have leash or not, and it seems like that's obviously a big deal. So I was suggesting that we just say keep dogs on trails and out of the field to protect wildlife. So it's not, you don't have to have a leash, but use your discretion kind of thing and pick up the dog waste. So these would be just like 9 by 12s, maybe white background, or so just wanted to see, again, we've already approved the funding for the budget, so I just wanted to get if we should make these, or what your thoughts are, or if you have any suggestions for changes, or.
I'm very much in favor of adding those signs. Yes, I
me
think
too.
particularly the just reiterating it's pedestrian only area.
Yeah, I was out there and 4 kids rode by on bikes and I was pulling them in basic plan. I didn't wanna, I mean, they were just having a good time and
Yeah.
but it would help the other signs.
You wanna pass those around?
Oh, sure, yeah, I did, yeah, don't look at like the overall sort of layout of this one. Portsmouth sign will do a good job.
Yeah, the walk we took out there that you organized with
Matt
Rob-
Tarr.
Nat,
That was it, yeah, 'cause-
yes, that was great. We learned so much about the birds out there. That was really interesting.
So that's I can talk a little bit about that. So one of the things we talked about, I sent you a couple maps of Wigan Farm, but, the DPW mows, which is awesome. They mow the trails and they mow the meadow in the fall. And we've always thought about having a little bit more alder and native shrub. So there's a finger that comes in where people sled, right with that sled, and there's a well kind of at the base of that. But that little finger really should be more shrub habitat. And so, that would be just a matter of being out there with DPW in the fall when they mow and just, and Karen, who's head of the mowing, she was like, great, sounds great, we'll just, we can come out and flag a little bit, so they were all totally in favor of that. We talked a little bit with Matt about moving that trail because the bobbling are there, but I was out several more times pulling invasive plant, and then there was a birder photographer came out, and he was there for like a couple hours taking pictures of the bobbling, so we chatted about it. And it seemed like the bobblings were on both sides of the trail, so moving the trail wouldn't necessarily help, and then that's kind of disruptive to, we know where the trail is. So my suggestion is we wait on that kind of thing. And then if you go on the trail back to where we did the clear cut on the other side of the stone wall, on this side of the stone wall in the meadow, the bittersweet has gone crazy. So we talked to Rick and Karen if they would be willing to, when they go mow the trail, so that's every week or two, I don't know how often actually they go out there, to mow that bittersweet right back to the stone wall, because if you keep mowing it, eventually it will start to get back to more grass and it should suppress it. And they were totally happy to do that. And they're also willing to weed trim around the signs, because those were sort of just getting a little bit weedy. So I haven't been back. I don't know if anybody's been out there. I've actually been able to start doing that.
It's been hard with all this rain probably to do
I know,
mowing,
yeah,
but
exactly,
it's gonna need it because it'll start growing like crazy soon.
So that was so nice, because they were totally like, yep, that sounds.
Yeah, that's really great that they're willing
Yeah,
to do that.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, so. And then I sent you before the stuff about this invasive plant out there. It's kind of my thing, so get a little excited about invasive plants. And, volunteer
Someone needs to.
project. Volunteer project.
Yeah, so while we were out there, Ellen and I talked a little bit about possible volunteer projects out there. One of them was potentially adopting weed whacking around the signs, but sounds like that's taken care of. But we did notice there were 4 or 5 bikes just kind of laying in the grass when we were leaving, which was great because that means they were walking the trails, not biking on the trails. But we thought it might be great to have a bike rack out there and maybe a picnic table in that grassy area near the trailhead sign. And also the trail sign, just, it's still in pretty good shape, but it could use some good cleaning and maybe a little bit of shoring up. I'm not super handy, but it seems like maybe it could use a little bit of shoring up. So either, I had thought that if we could add a little bit to that, maybe an Eagle Scout project, but it sounds like the Eagle Scout would be in Heron Point, which I think is a great spot for her. So either maybe a small volunteer work day or, corporate, in the past I've had luck with corporate work days, little small groups from the same corporation that want to do just like a quick service day. So maybe, I don't know, maybe in the fall we could talk about that a little, or maybe we could pick a date in the fall to do that.
Maybe the afternoon of October 2nd.
I know.
We also talked about, there's the 2 benches that are out there, and they need
Yeah.
to be scraped and repainted.
Yeah.
That's actually a great, like Timberland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timberland's great. I don't know, I work a lot with them at my actual job at the Discovery Center, so I don't know if it might be like a little weird for me to also reach out with them and ask them to come here.
Well, we're in the
But-
books with Liberty Mutual for,
Okay. They're great too.
but they just, haven't been having them.
Yep.
And so I think right now the best hope we would have would be May of 2022 that they might be resuming at that point.
The other option might be, I don't know if the commission has ever signed up for the United Way Day of Caring in September. It's right around September 11th. So it's the day of service, to honor that day. And you just kind of pick your projects and put it on the United Way website, and then, either individual people can sign up or a corporation will sometimes sign up, a group of 10 people to come out. It's a day, which I know can be a little bit tough. And I think one of the rules, at least this used to be it, but of course they didn't have it last year, is that you have to provide them lunch, whether you have a half a day work day or a full day work day. But that might be something we could maybe, talk about. Otherwise, I think we could probably do it piecemeal too. I mean, I think I had a pretty good luck with social media and the cleanup, and I think that, if we did piecemeal projects, like maybe someone could do the benches, that really likes to do that stuff. Someone could, come out and take care of the sign. Someone could maybe come out and put together a bike rack. We could take care of it piecemeal. So, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think.
At UNH have a day of service, usually like early November, and it's usually small groups of like 10.
Yeah.
We provide the transportation, you don't have to provide meals or anything like that. We give them work gloves and snacks. So if we were willing to wait that late, definitely could easily get a group
I mean,
together.
the upside of that is there's no chance of like a 90-degree heat advisory day, which is always great for working outside.
Yeah. We have had cold weather.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
But it
fall
hasn't been
might
an
be
issue
better
in
for
the
that
past.
reason, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the other day of either of us doing it. We could advertise and try and get some people interested, or trying to go through those sites and see if we can. I think we might have to buy materials for. And there are some rules about working with power tools for some of those groups too. I believe they don't want their, but
Does it fit nature groupy?
I think it could definitely fit nature groupy.
Yeah.
And if some of us were out there on like a Saturday morning to kind of run the work day, I think it could work really great for something like that. I know a lot of places obviously do have rules about power tools and volunteers for good reason. If people bring their own power tool and use it, is that something we're allowed to let them do, or?
I think what depends on what kind of group. If it's like a corporate group, they probably will be no,
Right.
because they're still their
Still a
employee.
liability, yeah.
But if it's just a volunteer thing that we organize, I would think that would be better.
Okay.
If people want to bring their own power tools and work with their own power tools, that would be the best. Yeah.
Well, maybe I will look into the nature groupy avenue, and maybe, I don't know, would Saturday morning be a good time for most of us here? I mean, I feel like most of us probably are fairly busy during the week. Okay. All right. I will do that. And then the other potential volunteer project, a couple meetings ago I talked about the resident who contacted me after the cleanup about the cemetery. We had a little miscommunication. I thought she meant the Elm Street Cemetery. All around there for a long time. I couldn't find any sort of area where a bunch of trash had gathered. But it's actually the Calvary Cemetery, which I'm not as familiar with. I think at this point, with how grown in everything is and with the ticks this year, definitely worth waiting until vegetation is kind of dying back. But I think we should revisit that later this year. I mean, if there's a big trash collection between the industrial complex and the cemetery, maybe we can work with the cemetery committee and kind of organize a cleanup and,
Okay. Are we ready to go on to educational programs, or did you have anything else? Or no, what? Sorry, Heron Point.
Yeah, Heron Point and Neil Mill, and then education.
I was out with John Martin, the forester, and Greg, his recreation guy, who does all the GIS mapping and trail stuff. We did a quick walk through. Greg has a really great trail. He builds trails. He's really good with trails. So he had gone back out and laid out sort of modified trail that I had originally thought about, and I think we had talked about, and it looked great to me. So, this is their busy season. But they're promising to get a draft plan to us for the August meeting. pretty detailed, the trail map, recommendations on some forestry stuff, which mostly pertains to potential hazard trees, both ones that are there right now and also the hemlock sadly is going to die from hemlock blade delicate. And so I think John's gonna, really put together, well, these trees should come out and this is how we would do it. And it sounded like for most of the stuff, they could actually do the work if we wanted them to, so he's gonna put in costs and we can decide if we want them to go ahead and implement some of the stuff. And one of the things I talked to Greg about with the trail was, it's really good to have a expert trail builder the day, to help build the trail, but then have volunteers there. So you have this expert and then volunteers like this Eagle Scout and maybe her scout mates or other people can come and then help build it while that person is there. So Greg would be able to do that? We'd probably have to pay, to have his time, but, and then hopefully that could happen this fall, or we could see when Eagle Scout.
Yeah, I think what I would do, Ellen, maybe is forward her information to you,
Sure.
and you could tell her that that's the plan right now, and then because I think she's got a pretty aggressive timeline. She's a get things done kind of person. Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Really good. So anyway, that's on track. It's looking good. Anything else I can? Well, you can do Neil Mill Road, which is just the update of what happened.
Yeah, I mean well, I don't know. Maybe not everyone did hear about that. So the Neil Mill Road, the applicant that had the purchase and sales agreement with the seller dropped. They're out of it. So that's why nothing has happened with that as far as the town council considering anything, because there's no question before them at this point. So, there isn't any other update on that at that point. It's kind of sitting there. They're only having one meeting in July, right? Is that right? So,
Yeah, next week.
so we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but so I think I'll leave the rest to then. So why don't we go to educational programs? Chris?
Sure. Chris and Ellen. Maybe Ellen, you want to go first through the monthly layout and talk a little bit about thinking how to put some cohesion to our monthly
Sure.
programming.
Yeah, well, but Chris has been putting these great programs together every month, which have been awesome. So, so we met and started thinking about maybe next year as well, what topics would be. So I think, did everybody get this? Yeah. So we just put it into like a little, table to show you. And so it's sort of a combination of continuing the monthly programs at monthly meetings, although it doesn't have to be every month, and then some site things. So I'll just go through a couple, and then Chris is going to talk about the October one. But I put in this BioBlitz for September. I don't know if y'all get Nature Groupie, the emails, and they're hosting this really cool town-wide all September BioBlitz. So I thought I'm going to do the August 10th training, and I'm sure I'm going to participate. But I thought we should, see how that goes and really advertise it to see if other people want to get involved. I think it's really cool. Haley's awesome, so that would be great. I'll skip over October for a sec. When we were working on the Neil Mill Road, I was working on the map for that. Mark West, if you remember, he did the original prime wetlands mapping for Newmarket, and he said that the rules have changed since we did the prime wetlands mapping, and it's a really good idea for towns to sort of update those. And so I thought, well, why not have him come and give a little talk on how that could be done at one of our monthly meetings, if that sounds okay. Yeah, so we haven't really confirmed any of them yet. So if you think of other things that you'd like, we could put those in. But the New Hampshire Astronomical Society do these great evening programs you can sign up for, and they'll come and we can pick a place and a date to do that and invite the public. I thought it'd be fun to do a snowshoe hike on the Greenway itself. Let's see. Morning bird walk maybe at Wigan Farm in May, and Chris is talked about doing some photography out about somewhere, and then the rest are monthly programs. So just some ideas just to give us some
One thing we could think about, because we had a lot of interest in a couple of years ago, was when we created the big piles out at Wigan Farm when we cut all the brush. And then we did the fire in February. So if we did a combo of a snowshoe, maybe winter landscape, and then said after we'll have a little brush thing, that we might bring, because people commented afterwards, you should have advertised that, we would have come out, we would have liked to have come out and
The hot
done.
chocolate and
Yeah, hot chocolate, and so
We had
maybe.
a couple of sledders.
Yeah, we had
last year.
sledders and stuff like that, so we could make it into a little winter carnival kind of thing.
We tried to kind of flip-flop between the really academic things sitting in here that can help us in the future make decisions that come across, or reading plans, or thinking about things that we need to know as background, and temper it with things that are then outdoors, kinesthetic, families, other people that just want to get out of the house and do something. Keeping the roll going with COVID, getting people outdoors maybe and safe, and just keeping that rolling, so. That also then can serve as the backbone of the it's tough to say, conversation column in the townwide newsletter, so I can follow this pattern now and make that column kind of match or talk up or give some background of the speakers or bio the speakers, or augment a little bit what's going on in that. The reading rate of those is 1,600 something subscribers, and it looks like about 600 people open it all up and read through it, so.
It's great.
It reaches quite a few people, yeah. So that's that part, right?
I'm all set, you can talk about October.
October 2nd, this Genesis is brewing, and so we really need input here. People on the council last year or before might remember, the year before, might remember that when Casey Finch was here, we had talked about having tours of conservation properties, and the tour could include ride around, and somehow working with NBA to see if any restaurants would give some kind of a coupon or a deal if you went on this bus ride and visited the conservation properties. That then, for a number of reasons, is lying fallow. We're trying to resurrect that. We do have a date. I did take the liberty of running the idea by Park and Rec so that we could bring it to this meeting now, so that we could get something established and then have a subcommittee start working. October 2nd was the date that Park and Rec suggested. We can use that facility for free and their vans for free. Well, I don't know if we'll need the vans, but in a way, the vans could be interesting, because picture, you drive to the Park and Rec, we could have 3 or 4 miniature presentations, coffee, hello to the people, tour then either in your own car or in these vans to the properties, and then come, and that's the end of it, but come back to the Park and Rec building, have some kind of closure, some kind of I'm going to say closure, but grand finale is what I'll say to make it sound really exciting. So then have the closure to that, and then either that's it and you dissipate, or there could be a small volunteer component to go do something somewhere that you just saw because you were on this. So it's easy, a person, an individual could come for the whole thing, could come just listen to the presentations and split, could come hear the presentations, tour around, could come tour around, and then come back, convene, and then go do the volunteer project. With the volunteer thing being probably short and sweet, not a big extensive thing. It's October 2nd is the date that we have. We do have a lot of support from Park and Rec. Tara Barker over there has, her background is outdoor education, and so she was really thrilled to be involved with her angles on the way to getting people involved in some kind of events. And then a couple of speakers have percolated to the top, one being a birder already. Dick Lutz, who's on the Rockingham County Conservation District, is interested, and he does meetups with a lot of people at the Seacoast. And he's also recently in your volunteer program, taking some training. So he was interested in talking about birds, and that keeps us with the Matt Tarr and the bird habitat kind of a thing flowing. And what are you going to be seeing in October? What's migrating? Bird feeders? It's prenatal, but anyway, we have a bird kind of person if you think that's interesting. Photography can be pretty wide open. I would be willing, I would like to have us in the background have one of those picture post things that are a few different places. I think we have a lot of sites that would be right for that. But anyway, so there could be some after effects, could be take pictures of your conservation trip, kind of like we had done before, send those pictures, so then we have a product. So we have the experience product. And Melissa has experience helping with the photo thing, so maybe getting people to send some pictures, they get posted on social. And so the whole idea of this October 2nd is all the ages that you can imagine, and it could attract people from different towns. I will also say that Newfields Conservation Commission has somebody with a lot of expertise in the health and wellness of bringing nature indoors. So a mini presentation there could be her talking about that aspect, which tags on, I keep pointing but to the sign that you were talking about with the health and wellness benefits. It's October, so bring nature indoors. And that could appeal to a whole different, somebody that wants to come and listen to that kind of presentation and learning a little bit about what we used to call house plants, but we should call them indoor plants. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So I think what we would need is probably the consensus that yes, October 2nd works, pursue this, pursue working with the Park and Rec, and then have a subcommittee that could then work with Tara and say what else, and then brainstorm also what could the actual 9 o'clock this, 9:20 that, who says what when. It could be interesting to have one of the vans dedicated towards Kim Tilton from the Sunrise Sunset Center, advertising to her crew, so that there could be people that patron the sunrise, different things that they do. And she has a really active trail walkers group, so they might to drive around and see different properties. They recently had a trail walk with Ellen leading it at the Wigan Farm, so they might like to see some other ideas and kind of like pre-scout where to park, where to this, where to that, what kind of walk would that be. So that's where we're at with that. With a quick salute to Casey, who was sitting over there somewhere when this kind of idea really came up 2 years ago.
Well, I'd be interested in being on the subcommittee if that's helpful.
So do you want to, are you looking for a motion from us to accept that October date and go forward to planning and formation of subcommittee?
Yeah, I think that's effective. That way there is some real impetus behind being able to ask people to say, well, let's work on a schedule, let's contact people, and let's start to do the save the date kind of stuff to make
Okay.
it successful.
So I'll make a motion that we designate October 2nd as our date for, do we have a title that we're
What did
giving
you
it?
call it on that grid, Ellen?
Connect
Oh, there you go, Connect with Conservation, yeah.
Connect with Conservation event in coordination with Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm.
And needing a subcommittee to work on it.
I think that's the right way to do it. That way the subcommittee really can have
Okay.
the body of the body.
There's the motion. Do I have a second?
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
All in favor? Do we want to go ahead and try and designate some? We have one volunteer already for the subcommittee. Do we have any other volunteers for the
Yeah.
subcommittee?
I'll do it.
Two?
Thank you.
Yeah, it was last
Do you
summer.
want to try and get someone
Well, now-
outside too?
Yes, now that I know this, I can ask to actually have somebody from Park and Rec be a formalized member on this.
Yep.
That'll allow us to really meet whenever it's convenient, or it's part of her job then to be an affiliate, have the Park and Rec sponsorship with this.
Okay. All right. Covered everything?
I
Or-
think so.
Okay.
Save the date, people, October
Now,
2nd.
Sue, I need your help with one thing, and you know what it is. Because I was looking through my papers and I can't find it.
Don't know my statutory language, and I always rely on Sue to read it out for me. Yeah, I know, I got in the habit of doing it there for a while. There it is.
There it is.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to go into non-public session to discuss confidential matters related to real estate pursuant to RSA 1-A:3, 2, subsection C. Do I have a second on that motion?
A second.
All in favor? Okay, so we're going to non-public. She turned the